Hello everybody, my name's Wolf, and through this series of videos I'm going to explain to you the crazy, over-the-top world that nerds like me love so much, that is Warhammer 40,000. So get comfy, strap in, and prepare for a Noob-Splaining session. Okay, so quick recap of my previous video on the fall of the Eldar, but if you haven't already watched it, you need to go watch that now. Now, the Eldar ruled the galaxy, got a bit naughty, and caused the birth of Slaanesh, the Chaos God of taking things a little bit too far, and that's putting it mildly. Now, Slaanesh has a personal claim on every Eldar soul, which is a fate worse than death for any Eldar, whether that be the good kind, who are known as the Craftworld Eldari, or the bad kind, known as the Drukhari. Both factions came up with a way of avoiding this, but in this video we're going to concentrate on the Craftworld flavour, and we'll save the Drukhari for another time. So before I get into it, first of all I want to say thank you so much to everybody who subscribed and got me over that first personal milestone of 100 subs. Now we're on the march to the 250 subscriber mark, so if you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, it's just down there. Go on, click it, go on, you know you want to. And while you're at it, hit the other links in the description, which for UK and EU based viewers can get discounted minis from Element Games, and worldwide viewers can get high quality custom dice, like these Eldar ones from Baron of Dice. Right, that's enough shameless plugging, let's get into this, shall we? So after the fall of the Eldar and 99.99% of their population was wiped out, there were two kinds of survivors. The first were the ones in the webway who became the Drukhari. The second were the ones aboard the gigantic city-sized, sometimes bigger spaceships called Craftworlds, who became the Craftworld Eldari. The Eldar are an extremely psychic race and highly emotional, and after their fall the survivors on the Craftworlds realised they need to rein that shit in. So, akin to Vulcans, they spend their entire life controlling their emotions and trying not to be too psychic. Although they live much longer than humans, they also have a much lower birth rate. I mean, when you're spending your entire life suppressing your emotions, I suppose it's even harder to make small talk at the office water cooler, hoping it will lead to a date. As a result, the Eldar are a dying race barely clinging on to survival, in a universe where everything is actively trying to kill you. I mean, let's face it, even half the sheep in 40k are poisonous, probably, so every dead Eldar takes them one step closer to extinction. Unlike Vulcans though, instead of just following the path of logical reasoning, the Eldar way of life has split into many paths, and as highly emotional as they are, if they start down one of these paths, they are encouraged to walk it, as a way of keeping their emotions in check. There are many paths available to Eldar, including the path of the Artisan, the Warrior, and the Psyker. And with them living long lives, it is not uncommon for an individual Eldar to walk several paths during their lifespan. Now, all Eldar constructs are made from a substance called Wraithbone. Wraithbone is a psychoplastic that is actual warp energy that has been drawn into the real world and made solid. The Wraithbone can be used for solid panels such as armour plating for spaceship hulls, where it is stronger than any alloy produced by the Imperium. It can also be light and flexible and used as clothing, or even for complex machines with moving parts like guns and vehicles. All Eldar have the ability to form simple items at will, making every Eldar a walking replicator. Eldar that have followed the path of the Artisan as far as it leads are known as Bone Singers, and it is only the Bone Singers who can make the really complex stuff. Being from the warp, Wraithbone emits a small psychic shield that gets stronger the more Wraithbone there is, similar to the Gellerfields used by Imperial ships to protect them from the warp. It was this shield, along with the distance the ship was from their homeworld, that saved the Craftworld Eldar from the psychic scream of Slaanesh when it was born. Wraithbone also responds to the Eldar's psychic commands, so although their vehicles appear to have a steering wheel, they kind of don't. The steering wheel in an Eldar vehicle doesn't move, it's just where the driver will put their hands to help facilitate the psychic control of the vehicle. The driver thinks, I want to move there, and the Wraithbone vehicle does the rest. Likewise, Eldar weapons don't have triggers, they just psychically tell it to fire, and the weapon goes pew pew. Eldar turrets don't have to be aimed manually, the Eldar just think, shoot at that, and the Wraithbone aims and fires. Wraithbone also has regenerative abilities, so a damaged vehicle will over time fix itself, and this process can be speeded up with the help of the Bone Singer. However, it is still not fast enough to make a difference on the battlefield. Ship repairing itself is still pretty much a Necron thing. In the lore, Eldar laser, plasma and melter weapons are the most efficient and powerful of any of the species, but because they are psychically operated by the Eldar, nobody else can use them. Which is a good thing, as you can guarantee the orcs and some humans would have pillaged the fuck out of every Eldar armoury by now just to get the good guns. And any town players out there, this is your trigger warning. The Eldar have a weapon more devastating than the Tau railgun, which for years was the best weapon on the tabletop. Looking through the new army list, the railgun is now in about joint third place with most knight weapons, and lower if you include the weapons of the actual Titans. But at over $1,000 for a single Titan, I don't think you'll be fighting many of them on the tabletop. Talking about fighting, each of the factions in 40k generally has a weapon most commonly associated with it. For the Space Marines it's the bolter, for example. The Eldar signature weapon is the Shuriken Catapult. The Shuriken Catapult is a rapid-fire weapon that launches high-speed, mono-molecular thick discs which are both extremely sharp but easily deflected by heavy armour, like the power armour of a Space Marine. However, if an Eldar hit one of the weaker unprotected joints, then whoever is inside that armour is getting shredded, as several razor-sharp discs that can cut through flesh and bone while ricocheting all around the internal space of the armour. Bolters make you explode. Shuriken Catapults turn you into a Michelin 5-star approved soup. As always in 40k, Shuriken Catapults come in pistol, rifle and heavy versions, and are primarily used to make massed lightly armoured infantry armies like Orcs or Imperial Guards to simply fuck off. To deal with heavily armoured troops or vehicles, they have specialist units wielding weapons such as melter guns, las blasters, missile launchers and the heavy Wraith Cannon, which is the gun that is way better than the Tau railgun. Sorry Tau players, but it can devastate a squad of 5 Space Marines in a single turn. The railgun can only shoot one thing a turn. The Eldar also have specialised fast attack and melee units. Overall, the army is characterised as fast moving specialist units, with general units being a bit meh. Now this leads us on nicely onto the path of the warrior. All Eldar, once reaching a certain age, are drafted into the Eldar Craftworld Defence Forces, known as Guardians, where they are taught the basics of warfare, so all Eldar can be called upon at any time to defend the Craftworld should someone be stupid enough to attack a giant city-sized ship that is controlled psychically and no doubt covered with guns that don't need to be manually aimed, like I said. All the Eldar gunners do is just think, shoot that, and the Wraithbone does the rest of the work. Kinda reminds me when Adama says, "Clear my skies," and Galactica unleashes hell on the Cylons. Being a Guardian is considered a civil duty, and is not considered to be a military arm, more a necessity in defence of the Craftworld. As the Eldar are highly emotional, they also have somewhat of a tendency to get addicted to a way of life, hence a reason they have so many paths to kind of embrace this addiction and to work through it. Eldar who get addicted to warfare after training as Guardians can choose to walk the path of the warrior. If they do, the Eldar will give up their normal way of life and join one of the many aspect shrines on board the Craftworld, where they will study one particular aspect of warfare. These warriors are called, guess, the Aspect Warriors, and the best Aspect Warriors are given the title of Exarch, which is akin to a sergeant or equivalent squad leader. Each aspect also has a single Phoenix Lord, which is the best of the best at that style of warfare, and can be used as army commanders on the tabletop. Occasionally an Aspect Warrior, Exarch, will decide they have reached the end of that path, having learned everything there is to know about one specific type of warfare, so they will then go and join a different Aspect Shrine to learn a different style of warfare. These leaders, who have usually learned several styles, are called Autarchs, and will utilise a combination of weapons from multiple different aspects. They are no slouch in both ranged and melee combat. The Aspect Warriors themselves are a highly specialised unit designed to do one job and one job alone. Some of the most common are the Howling Banshees, who specialise in fucking up your day in close combat, the Striking Scorpions, who specialise on sneaking up on you and then fucking up your day in close combat, Dire Avengers that specialise in turning your lightly armoured opponents into soup, and Dark Reapers that specialise in using missile launchers to turn heavily armoured opponents into red mist, and Fire Dragons equipped with melter guns that are really good at turning vehicles into molten metal at close range, along with many other types. Now back in 2nd edition, some of the Eldar Aspect Warriors had some unique rules that made them really fucking dangerous. For example, if you were charged by a Howling Banshee squad, the Banshees would let out a psychic scream that paralysed the enemy, so when it came to the combat phase, the opponent would not be able to roll any dice, meaning you were just fighting against their stat line, not a stat line plus dice rolls. They were extremely squishy though, so if they got charged they were getting the shit kicked out of them. These days they are a bit tougher than they were, but no longer have that devastating psychic scream, but my god, they can shift across a battlefield at a lightning pace to fuck up your opponent's day. So if all Eldar souls are promised to Slaanesh, and they are really long-lived, why go to war at all? Well, in the lore they don't, unless it's really necessary. But then again, in the lore, Space Marines are only ever deployed to a tiny fraction of wars, but in reality over half the player base is Space Marines. They also managed to come up with a get out of jail free card for that whole Slaanesh will have my soul and spend the rest of eternity psychically fisting it. On every Eldar model is a large gem or crystal. These are known as soul gems. When an Eldar dies, its soul is transferred to the gem rather than sent to the war, where Slaanesh would do horrible things to it. If the gem is broken, then the soul will escape to the war. Now, if a Space Marine is seriously injured, they can be interred into a dreadnought. If an Eldar dies, the soul gem can be placed into a Wraithbone construct, which is the Eldar version of a dreadnought. These come in 3 sizes. You have Wraith Guard, which are about the size of a Space Marine, perhaps a little taller, a Wraith Lord, which is about 12 foot tall, and the Wraith Knight, which is just a massive walking bullet magnet. I mean, look at the size difference between it and a Space Marine. You know that heavy Wraith cannon I mentioned earlier? Well, a Wraith Knight can have 2 of these fucking goddamn things, plus 2 other heavy guns, as 2 heavy Wraith cannons isn't enough firepower. Good God. So, if the Eldar have all these soul gems they have collected over the last 10,000 years since the birth of Slaanesh, why don't they just use Wraith Constructs all the time? Well, when an Eldar soul gem is filled upon death, the gem is taken back to the craft world and placed into it. This allows the spirit to run freely through the craft world Wraithbone, which is known as the Infinity Circuit, where all the other spirits of the dead Eldar get together in an eternal social club. Now, very powerful Eldar psychers can communicate with the spirits in the Infinity Circuit and regularly ask them for advice. Now, I'm not sure how good the advice would be from someone who got shot in the head during their first battle compared to those that survived it, but hey, due to this sort of eternal afterlife, using Wraith Constructs controlled by already dead Eldar is frowned upon as almost a form of necromancy, but it's also considered a necessary evil when the shit has hit the fan. And if the Eldar are going to war, then you can guarantee the fan is already buried under the biggest pile of shit you can imagine. Now, the Eldar are a fast-moving army with powerful offence but weaker defences that utilises a lot of specialist troops to deal with what your enemy has brought to the field. The downside of this is you don't know what the enemy will bring to the field if you're turning up at a local club for a random game. And if Eldar don't play to their strengths, then they get smashed very quickly. If you're just playing with friends and you know what models they have to choose from, you can very easily tailor an army to obliterate them in a few turns. Each army used to have a core set of troops that they would have to bring, so there was always an element of knowing at least what half of the army on the tabletop would be, but now that is no longer true. So creating the perfect Eldar to counter an opponent will be very much a trial and error, but once you have each opponent figured out, you will be wiping them off the table faster than a greased weasel shit sliding off a chrome shovel. Back in the day, you would have to bring some Guardians or some Dire Avengers, which were pretty useless against Space Marines. Now if you're playing Space Marines, you can drop the Guardians and just bring Dark Reapers, Fire Dragons and other units that are good at fucking up a Space Marine's day. Playing Orcs? Forget the Reapers, bring Dire Avengers, Jet Bikes and anything else equipped with Shuriken Catapults. In my experience with Eldar, it's either a massive victory to you as you board wipe your opponent before the end of the 4th turn, or they fucking obliterate you totally. Very few games with Eldar ever seem to go the distance and had to be decided on victory points. Don't get me wrong, although a lot of the units are highly specialised, they are not a specialist army to play, and playing Eldar just means you need to be a little bit more aware of what the strengths of each unit is compared to other armies, but not by much. For example, a Space Marine tactical squad is good at shooting any infantry. With Eldar, you use Guardians and Dire Avengers on light infantry and Dark Reapers on heavy. From a lore point of view, the Eldar are a technologically superior but dying race. From a tabletop point of view, the Eldar are a fast-moving, powerful army, but a little bit weaker on the defensive side. They can dish it, but they can't really take it. And from a collector's and painter's point of view, a lot of the Eldar units are all in different colour schemes, meaning you get to mix things up when you get the old paintbrushes out. In conclusion, the Eldar are a powerful army, but you have to pick your fights. But that's where the manoeuvrability comes in, allowing you to zip around the battlefield so you can pick your fights. And there we have it. That brings us to the end of this video. If you laughed or learnt anything, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and if you are already subscribed, then don't forget to share this video with somebody who could do with some noob-splaining in their life. Also, leave a comment on your favourite part. I do try and interact with every comment. But if you made it this far, thank you, and I'll see you next time.